Hello everybody, my name is 𝐤𝐴𝐧𝐭𝐡𝐬 and welcome to the podcast. Today we have a truly inspiring and pioneering guest with us, Dr. Karen Pierce. She is a leading researcher from the University of California, San Diego. She has dedicated her career in transforming our understanding of early childhood development. Welcome, Dr. Pierce. I wanted to start by understanding your inspiration because you have spent around 20 years in developing kids at early. What was that moment or maybe the struggle that inspired you to take this journey? Because in your research, you have talked about the age-old statistics that it takes 4 years to diagnose autism, and you have brought it down to 12 months, 12 to 15 months. So I just want to understand, what was that inspirational moment for you?
Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited. It's my first time in India. But to answer your question, it actually came to me at a very young age. I started working with severely aggressive adolescents with autism at age 19 when I was going to college. And it was actually my first day working in an autism research lab. And we were taking this child, actually this young man, George, for ice cream because he had gone an entire week without, getting angry, without throwing any chairs or hitting anybody or doing anything. And so we were giving him a reward. He got to go to his favorite ice cream parlor and pick out some ice cream. And I love ice cream too. And so both George and I ran up to the front and we were looking at all the different flavors of ice cream. And then all of a sudden, bam, he turned around and just punched me in the face. And I fell down to the ground and I was stunned. I mean, I had no idea why he would do something like that. And the graduate student that was working with me at the time, ran over to me and said, "Karen, don't cry, don't yell at him, don't do anything because you might accidentally reinforce the behavior." I was like, what is this guy talking about? I had no idea. And then I, laid there and went into the bathroom and cried, basically. But then they were saying, Karen's never going to come back for her second day of work. But I did because I was completely fascinated. I intuitively understood that he did that out of frustration because here he was, 16, not able to talk. He'd gone his whole life with lots of frustration. And I was like, I want to try to help this child and I want to try to help other kids. And so that kind of started my journey. It was with this kid. His name was George. Okay. Must have been very, very difficult in the sense that many other people in similar situations, they would have escaped. They probably wouldn't have come back. And so what was your journey from this moment? Let's say this moment was 0. So what was your journey from 0 to 1? 1 being where you could see, screen, evaluate, and treat in action. So that was really the moment where I knew we had to develop better interventions so George wouldn't struggle so much. I was so young. I don't think I quite understood that the issue was that he probably didn't get it recognized, and they probably just called him somebody with, at the time, mental retardation was the term that people used. They didn't even know he had autism, really, until he was much older. And it really probably wasn't until I was in graduate school that I started to really understand that the key is very early identification and intervention. And it came to me because I started working with young kids with autism, and I just saw the power and the transformation that some children were fortunate enough to experience. Not everyone responds, to traditional interventions, but many children do. I started to notice that there are some kids. There was one little girl that I worked with. She was really, really severe. She would bang her head, eat tubes of toothpaste. But her mom was relentless. She really wanted her child to, get better, obviously. And I helped, facilitate the intervention. And now you wouldn't even know that she had a diagnosis. And she was extremely severe. And we started her intervention at age 2. So I started to say and think to myself, okay, how in the world are we going to create some sort of a grassroots movement to make it in everyone's mind that let's look for the signs. Let's try to find autism at the youngest age as possible so we can get the kids into treatment at the youngest age as possible. It was just sort of a gradual evolution from getting punched in the face by George at 19 and then kind of starting doing treatment myself and seeing that how effective it can be for some kids. If only, everybody could get identified at young ages, and then starting to do my Get Set Early model and starting to think about how I can create and discover biomarkers so that it's just, you can just roll it out universally in America, in India, in China, wherever, worldwide. It's just a biomarker. Anybody can participate in a test to figure out kind of what their status is.
Amazing. Um, Actually, the name Get Set Early is pretty proactive in the sense that the name itself explains everything. How did you come up with this name?
You know, I wanted it to, you know, be something that would be memorable. I deliberately, it was a conscious effort. I thought about it and I was like, and I talked to my colleagues and it wasn't just like random. I wanted it to have a message like, you know, screen, evaluate, treat, that people understand that these things have to be linked in rapid succession. As soon as you screen, then you have to evaluate and understand the child's
Correct.
developmental status. And then as soon as you know what that is, you got to start treatment right away. And like all three kind of go hand in hand. And it was deliberate messaging. I mean, I don't have a degree in advertising or anything like that, but I just sort of thought about it and, you know, wanted it to have meaning in and of itself.
Like, for example, in India, if parents take their children to a race in schools, then before the race starts, they say, get, set, go.
Yes.
You must have heard of it.
Yes.
When I heard about Get Set Early, like the first memory came to my mind was that of Get, Set, Go.
I didn't even make that connection. It's the same thing in America. It's like ready, set, go. And as soon as you hear go, everybody takes off.
Yes,
and that's a great analogy because we want kids with autism to take off.
Yes.
And many of them do. And so that's really exciting. That's I hadn't thought of that.
I'm hoping that every child and every parent in India will be able to relate to this particular word, Get Set Early. You talked about this girl who was of 2 years and then she was diagnosed with autism.
Yes.
How did it make you feel when you completed this journey of must have taken you so many years for SET, screen, evaluate, and to build this chain, screen, evaluate, and treat. How did it make you feel? Like, did you feel content and satisfied after that, or was it or did you feel more responsible to now distribute it all over the world?
Yeah, I mean, actually, my first journey with my first sort of conceptualization of the Get Set Early model was screen, evaluate, and treat. And so I did what was the easiest and the fastest at the time, which was just a parent report screen, which is what everybody does to screen for autism.
Correct.
But the difference of my model at the time was I went around and I met with over 200 pediatricians and I said, let's all work together, start screening for autism as young as 12 months. I kept pushing the idea of 12 months. And again, this was like 20 years ago when that was unheard of. And we just used a parent questionnaire. We used the CSBS at all 12, 18, and 24-month well baby checkups. And then as I started doing that, I started to realize that these parent questionnaires, while they're really good, there's lots of errors. It's very subjective. And so I was like, let me just, any baby that fails this questionnaire, they would come to our center. And then I tried to discover biomarkers and I fell in love with eye tracking for its ease. It's objective, quantitative, super fast. So I used that initial Get Set Early model, which was just based on parent report. And obviously, parents give lots of great information. And we've learned so much. And we are actually incorporating some parent questionnaires in our eye tracking model. But I went from this parent approach, this parent screening approach, to using the kids that were referred to discover the eye tracking biomarkers. And now the Get Set Early the Get Set Early model is really about using eye tracking.
Okay. Actually, I want to dig deeper into eye tracking technology separately. But initially, I want to talk about how did you convince pediatricians and parents. So I read your research. And in your research, it was written that even though many children failed the test in the sense that they were diagnosed with autism in the first test itself, but still a significant number of pediatricians didn't show confidence and didn't refer those children. So how did you break that barrier and, how did you convince these pediatricians to refer these children for further treatments?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what you're referring to is the kind of parent questionnaire model. And that's, again, exactly why I'm kind of moving into objective biomarkers with eye tracking for that very reason. Because even though a child might fail a parent questionnaire, pediatricians were using their own clinical judgment and they were actually right most of the time, because there are a lot of false positives with these parent questionnaires, which is why we need eye tracking or some other biological marker to just move away from that subjective. Because what was happening was a parent would fill it out, a baby would fail, the doctor would look at this baby and say, there's nothing wrong, there's no delay here, there's nothing wrong, I don't need to refer them for an evaluation. And they wouldn't. Their own, clinical judgment was overriding what the questionnaire was saying. And that is why the need to get biology into the picture, to me was so strong.
Okay.
So that's another reason why I really kind of threw my whole heart and soul into this eye tracking, because you can't argue with biology. It just is what it is. And if you've got a child that is showing unusual patterns of visual gaze and the doctor sees it, there isn't a single doctor who's going to go against that. And to kind of go back to your first question, how did I convince the doctors in San Diego? Because we're just field testing it in California right now. I can show you, actually. I've got my laptop, and it would take you 2 seconds, and you'd say, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing it," because I'll show you one of the eye tracking tests, which is called the GeoPref test, and I can show you the performance of a neurotypical child, and I'll show you the performance of a child with autism, and in 1 minute you can tell this child has autism. And so it's sort of like the power is in just seeing it. So there's no convincing that's required. You just have to look at it and you can see for yourself. So yeah, it's easy to convince pediatricians because I show up with my laptop and I show it to them and they're like, wow. And they've all been, really, really supportive. I mean, this is brand new. And not in the sense, okay, fine. I have been working on this for 20 years, but in the laboratory. It took me a while to develop all the different eye tracking tests because some of them didn't work. And then I throw it in the trash and then I develop a new one. Like right now, I've made 6 different eye tracking tests. And the cool thing about the test is that because I've worked with children with autism for so long, I know that obviously they're all very different. And there's no one single eye tracking test that would be able to detect all different types of autism, because you have some children with autism that, they don't really make great eye contact and they don't necessarily like to visually attend to social interactions. But then there are other kids with autism that have great eye contact and they do watch and they do have, they do visually attend to social interactions. But then you have another type of child who maybe they don't respond when you call their name. Sometimes, parents might even thought they were deaf when they were babies because they're not paying attention to human speech. Some of my other eye tracking tests use gaze contingent eye tracking technology, which basically just means that where the baby looks on the screen triggers a sound file that will play. So we can determine, what does this child like to listen to? Do they like to listen to human speech, or would they prefer to listen to something else, like a car beeping down a highway?
Motherese versus...
Exactly. Yes, you've read all my papers. That's amazing. Yes. And then there's finally like a third subtype. There are some kids who actually will listen to stuff. They've got pretty good visual attention, but they're bad at shifting. So if we're having like a fast conversation or I point to something over there, they may not follow my point. They might have a hard time, with all the rapid interaction. So those are kind of more kids who have challenges with shifting attention. So some of the eye tracking tests are tailored for kids with more visual attention challenges. Some of the other eye tracking tests are more for kids with auditory social attention challenges. And then the third type of test is for kids who have challenges with shifting attention. So that's like one of the things I love about the Get Set Early model is I envision it as something that's really fluid and dynamic. It's like some people might develop a medical test and they're done and then that's it. I want it to get better and better because I have lots of visions for how it's going to evolve. It does more than just identify autism from a diagnostic perspective. We can tell you how severe the child's symptoms are. In the future, we're hoping to be able to tailor treatments. There's just a lot that we can do. So this is just the beginning, although it's, a very exciting beginning. There's just a lot we can do.
Actually, now I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
So first thing you said that, so when you're doing this questionnaire-based exam, in that there is a dichotomy between the result that you get from your questionnaire versus what doctors, whatever they are perceiving using their knowledge. So there is this dichotomy or conflict. So your test, first of all, removes that conflict because there is nothing left, right? So it is very easy to convince these pediatricians, right?
Right. Yeah. So to just kind of paraphrase, if I think what you're saying is, just regular parent questions leaves ambiguity and doubt in some doctors' minds because they may have a different opinion of what the results are from a parent questionnaire. Whereas eye tracking technology, it's objective, quantitative, and we have really good data showing the test reliability is very high. That means if a baby takes the eye tracking on Monday and then they take it again on Tuesday, they're going to get almost exactly the same score. And so it's very robust. And it's just, like I said, you get these numbers out about, percent of time that they're looking there, or the number of saccades, or there's a whole bunch of cool things that you can get out from eye tracking. And there's no subjectivity to it. It's just completely objective. And so I think physicians, of course, want to always give their patients the best medical care. They want, they want things that they can really feel confident in. And so I think eye tracking kind of delivers that.
Okay. And from a parent point of view also, like if parents get to see these videos, right, at the end of the day, it must be very convincing for parents also. Like there is nothing left. I agree to your point.
Yeah, and scores is generated on the screen and then also in a little report. And we have it scaled from 0 to 100 because I wanted it to be clinically useful immediately without like a lot of guesswork. And we have it scaled so that like 0 to 49.99 means kind of low to no risk for an autism diagnosis. And then 50 to 100 means you're falling within that autism diagnostic range with higher number meaning more symptom severity. So a child who has a 51 going to have fewer symptoms than a child who's got a 93. And so we have it scaled to talk not only about the probability of an autism diagnosis, but also how severe the symptoms are going to be.
And let's say if I have to come back to the same question, like would you say that now with this test, pediatricians will definitely refer? Like as per your research, a few or significant number of pediatricians, they didn't refer their children. Do you say that with this technology, they will definitely refer?
I believe so. I mean, so, basically what you're saying is when you had just the parent questionnaires, sometimes they don't refer, but with eye tracking, they do and they will. And yes, definitely. Because how can you,
how can you divide?
How can you ignore, because we've got this report and it tells you, on the GeoPref test, this child looked at the geometric shapes 97% of the time. You're a doctor, maybe you're a dad, I don't know you, but how are you going to ignore that? Right. And then especially because you have 6 tests and then it says maybe on the second test, they're looking at cars zooming down a highway 82% of the time. And on the shifting, they have no shifts. So, like when you see in print and you see what the results are, I think I think it's kind of hard to ignore that.
Correct. And you have also mentioned that there are 3 tests that parents have to take. Like first is at 12 months, then 18 months and 24 months. And let's say in the first test itself, the child, didn't show any signs of autism. Don't you think parents will drop off from there? They might not come back. So how should we, in India, convince parents to take all of these 3 tests? What exactly should we tell them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question. I think it's because the nature of autism is such that it's a small percentage. To be perfectly honest, most children with autism will fail it or, show social attention deficits the first time they're taking eye tracking. But there are a small percentage of kids that actually do pretty well when they're younger, and then their autism symptoms become more severe and obvious, and they don't perform as well as they get older. And so it's important to do repeat testing at all well baby checkups. But the vast majority of kids will fail the very first time they take it. But we actually have done some research, and there are some kids that actually do really poor on every single eye tracking test that they take. But the overwhelming majority of children with autism will do okay on one test and then really bad on another, then sort of okay on one and then really bad on another, which is why it's really important to take all 6 tests so that you can kind of see that up and down profile. But there are some kids who will just across all of them won't perform particularly well.
And all of these tests have to be repeated after 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. Am I correct?
I think that is the ideal way to administer it. But really, to be perfectly honest, let's say you didn't go to your 12-month baby checkup or whatever, and you just go in for your first time at 24 months. The good thing about the eye tracking is you can pretty much administer at any age. We have it set up so that, let's say you're a doctor, and the mom is bringing the baby in because the baby broke their finger or something like that. You can use eye tracking at any time to be perfectly honest. Anytime you suspect autism, you can administer the eye tracking. Of course, at every well baby checkup, you can administer the eye tracking. So it's pretty much, we want to empower pediatricians and clinicians and anybody who thinks this might be useful to just use it whenever they want to. It kind of is, it's a natural integration into the medical system to do it at well baby checkups. And that is our first kind of approach to this. But you certainly can use it anytime you want to.
Yeah, I agree. There is no consumer behavior change that is happening. Like
Exactly,
parents
'cause
are already coming to the
already
pediatrician.
going. So,
Okay. Okay.
it's just like we're hoping that this is going to just kind of expand and add more depth and objectivity to these well baby checkups.
So this technology is to be used by pediatricians
Yes.
to screen, evaluate, and treat children.
Yes.
Do you feel that a separate awareness should directly be created for parents also?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the awareness for parents really has more to do with sort of understanding what the developmental milestones are for young children. Like, for example, most children will start to say their first word by their first birthday. And if your child isn't starting to babble or start to say their first word by their first birthday or by 15 months, then that is something that you should be kind of paying attention to. If your child is not showing like responsive social smiles or social engagement, that's something to pay attention to. So really when it comes to kind of parent awareness, it has more to do with making sure that parents really understand kind of what the signs are of typical development versus atypical development and when they kind of should reach out to try to get some help.
So awareness content should be how a normal child will get developed. And if that particular thing is not happening, then they should go and get tested.
That's right.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So in India, pediatricians would be very much interested in to understand the specificity and sensitivity of this technology.
Yes, I've spent a huge amount of time researching this. And right now we're in the process of publishing a paper. We've got over 2,000 toddlers who have participated in one or more of the eye tracking tests. But when you take that full battery of 6 tests, we're up to around 70% sensitivity and 90% specificity and around 92 to 93% positive predictive value. So it's highly accurate and highly useful. And yeah, we're super excited about it.
As you just explained, that you have this 6 tests, and these 6 tests are holistic in the sense they focus on all the characteristics of autistic child. Like they focus on all the problems, be it speech related delays or behavioral issues or aggression or gaze, focus problems. So all of these tests capture all the problems. So is it safe to say that this is a holistic test?
I think that is a very kind way to think about it. I don't know that we're completely there yet. Our eye tracking tests don't really capture kids who might have problems with aggression. Usually at this age, we're targeting really, 12 months to 36 months. You don't really see a huge amount of aggressive behavior at that age. But we did design the tests to really capture children who have those visual social attention issues, auditory and shifting, because autism is very heterogeneous, right? There's so many different, some individuals on the spectrum will go on, get a law degree and become a lawyer. And other individuals maybe will never be able to even talk, but they both have that same label. And so we deliberately developed eye tracking tests that capture all the different subtypes, but we're not done yet. I have ideas for more eye tracking tests that I'd like to develop to get that sensitivity from 70% even higher to capture more kids on the spectrum. And also, it's not just about the diagnostic part. It's about understanding their biological subtype so that we can move into precision medicine, so we can move into having subtyping be standard of care for autism. Because right now, you're a mom, you worry your child has autism, you eventually get a diagnosis. Hopefully you'll get your diagnosis one day using eye tracking. But I want the eye tracking test to say, okay, your child, the probability of them meeting diagnostic criteria is 97 or whatever their score is, and your child has this particular eye gaze profile, they are this subtype of autism, that means we want you to have this kind of intervention. So we're going to be able to, in the future, tailor interventions based on the eye tracking profile, or at least I hope. This is just, a vision I've had for a while, and I have some grants into the National Institute of Health, which is where I get my money from back in America, and to try to start marrying those things, eye gaze profiles with intervention outcomes.
So you're saying that using this eye tracking technology, the care can also be standardized and personalized.
That is the goal. I hope so. I mean, eye tracking can diagnose. It tells you how severe the kid's symptoms are. We also have some research to show that it can tell you prognosis. So based on eye gaze, let's say when a baby is 12 months, we can have an idea of what their predicted prognosis will be 2, 3, 4 years later. And so that gives parents an opportunity to say, oh, okay, my child's headed down a particular path. Let me see if we can't change that course a little bit and try specific interventions to optimize that child's outcome.
Just from a layman perspective, like what exactly is happening in the mind of the child? Like just to give you an example, a friend of mine, his child was on the spectrum, and they diagnosed it around 3.5 to 4 years of age. And when I was talking to my friend, like obviously he was very emotional, and he said that we couldn't even see the signs. Like he was more or less in guilt. So what exactly is happening, in the mind of the child from a neurological point of view?
Mind that's kind of a philosophical
Is
question,
there a way
but I can't
to
say the brain.
yeah,
Okay,
brain
talking
yes.
from kind of like a neurosciences perspective, we know that children with autism actually experience early brain overgrowth. The majority of kids with autism actually have more brain cells than you do and I do and everybody else does. There have been research studies that have looked at post-mortem tissue. So when somebody with autism passes away, you have scientists who will count the brain cells, and kids with autism actually have about 36% to 60%, depending on the brain region, more brain cells than other individuals. When you look at an MRI scan, you see enlarged cortical volumes. There's also new brain cortical organoid research, which is a fancy way of just saying you're growing like a little mini brain in a petri dish. We see enlargement even in these BCO models. So autism involves early brain overgrowth. So what is going on in the minds of kids with autism, or the brains, I should say, is that they're experiencing just excessive brain growth. And when you have a lot of brain cells, that means you're going to have a lot of connections. If you have a lot of connections, some of them could be noisy. And if you don't have the right environmental input, right, if you're not getting, the kind of social engagement, or you're not paying attention to faces, or you're not listening to voices, the environment is not pruning those connections. That's the way things work with a typical baby. Connections that are useful to the baby get strengthened over time, and ones that aren't useful die away. But if a child with autism has so many brain cells, which is probably why so many kids with autism are super smart, but it's not getting pruned appropriately because they're not getting quite the same environmental experience that other kids are getting. And then it just kind of gets more severe and more severe as time kind of goes on. But from a neuroscience perspective, that is what's going on in the brain. Early brain overgrowth.
Is that the reason that because your neurological development is it's easier to change or build habits early on, like maybe after 2 to 3 years, as I think it is pointed out in your research also, that in 2 years or 3 years, your mind is in the developmental stage, brain is in the developmental stage, and after that, it becomes very difficult to bring changes. So do you feel that this also is a way to explain to parents to adopt this screening as soon as possible?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, if you look at if you're kind of nerdy and you want to look at brain cells, when you look at the kind of like brain cells in the frontal lobes, which is the part of your brain that's really important for social cognition and social development of, let's say, of a 6-month-old or a 12-month-old, and you just look at a picture, just kind of a cross section of like a piece of the brain, you'll see that there's not as many connections. You've got a lot of brain cells, but they're not connected. But then by the time the baby is like 18 months, there's more connections. The neurons are talking to each other. By the time they're 2, there's this huge dense web of connectivity between the brain cells. And so the whole idea between early intervention is it's a lot easier to get in there and start doing the intervention before all this connectivity gets wired up, because then you can try to guide these connections to be, really effective for the kids, versus after the brain's already not fully wired up, but has a lot of wiring that's happened, to go back and try to resculpt. It's way easier, is more of like a, preventative approach than a post hoc approach, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I just want to tie it with your experience with George, because like it is time and again, it is coming into my mind. So that 16-year child, had he gotten this, had this technology been there at that time, and if let's say George could get this test or screened early on, maybe within 2 years, do you feel that some tools could have been provided to parents to, make George's life easy?
I mean, I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have to go back in time to do the experiment. So I can't say for sure, but I certainly hope so. That is the whole motivation for doing all of this, that if there are just even a few kids that we're going to catch 1, 2, or 3 years earlier than would normally happen, and getting them into intervention at this young age could kickstart a totally different path in their life. I mean, just think about your own life, or my life. I one day went out and was driving down the street and somebody just came, ran through a stop sign and hit my car, and now I have lifelong neck pain. And I always think, gosh, if I just left the house 10 seconds earlier, this would not have happened. My whole life would have been changed. I wouldn't have to go to all this physical therapy all the time and all this stuff. And so it's just, you just don't know what that one little thing is that literally changes the course of your entire life. And it could be that getting, your identification a year or 2 years or even a couple of months earlier than you would have could change your whole life. We don't know that, we don't know,
Okay.
but that's the hope.
Okay. But still life can be better.
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, there are research studies showing that kids who receive early intervention have, higher IQs and cognitive abilities than kids that get their intervention at later ages. So that's been shown.
Like when I was doing my research on social media, I came across a reel on Instagram that showed that parents have to spend 5 to 6 times extra money to take care of, to raise an autistic child. So do you feel that economic factors also strain families, and they should actually get their child screened and treated as early as possible?
Yeah, I mean,
how is the problem in the US?
Yeah, I mean, no, you're right. I mean, caring for a child with autism, the lifetime costs are extremely high. But I don't think that messaging is going to matter to parents, because what matters to parents is all parents want the best for their child. It's it's a heart thing. And telling them that if you get your intervention earlier, it's not even 100% for sure, but there's really solid research to suggest that your child may end up on a stronger, a better path for their outcome. And what parent, wouldn't want that for their child? So I think, yeah, money is important, and it's true. It's very expensive to raise a child in the spectrum. And I think that, yes, if you improve symptoms, you're probably going to end up spending less money. Healthcare system's going to spend less money. But I don't think that that's going to really matter to parents. But I think what will matter is if you say, research shows that, your child's probably going to have a better outcome. They're probably going to have better language. They're probably going to have better cognitive skills if you get in there early, because the brain's just really plastic during early development. I mean, think about, yourself. Like if you want to learn a language at age 20, it's so hard to do, or even age 10. But at age 2, you do it effortlessly. The brain is just able to pick up things and reorganize and shape so easily. So it's just, it's just more, I think it's more of a emotional thing than a money thing.
I included a lot of questions on pediatricians and parents because, like in India, there are 2 problems. Like the problem number 1 is, like we have 1 pediatrician for close to 2,000 children. So they are wildly busy. They don't have time. The second is that there is too much stigma in the society. There could be cases wherein pediatrician noticed some behavioral issue with the child, but they were not able to convey it to parents because of stigma. From your learnings, would you like to tell us how to tackle such situations in India?
That's a really great question. You think about it for a second. My perspective maybe isn't common, but to be perfectly honest, although the eye tracking technology, when you get your score, it is a proxy for a diagnosis in the sense that it's highly accurate. But it's really more about catching kids who are not meeting their social milestones. If a child is performing poorly on eye tracking, that tells us they're not paying attention socially, visually, auditorily, or shifting, or all 3. And so I think it's great for doctors because when you get that score, it opens up the conversation, and you don't even have to necessarily, you can say this is consistent with autism, but it's really more like, look at this score. Your child is not meeting their social attention milestones, let's get them into intervention. So you don't even have to focus on the label. The label really isn't that important. It's just a vehicle to get the child the help that they need, because autism types of interventions are very, they're designed to help social attention challenges and language challenges. And so it's really more about getting the child the help that they need. And I think it makes that conversation easier because you have a number, you have a report, you can be like, look, your child's not paying attention to the speech. Look, your child was like watching the cars instead of the little kids. And it just makes the conversation easy. It's, you can talk about the label, you can not talk about the label. It's really about just getting the child back on track.
You're saying that it doesn't take much time. So time won't be an issue.
Yeah, it takes around 12 to 13 minutes to do the entire 6-test battery. But the way that we're doing it in America is we have medical assistants who, when a mom comes in for the well baby checkup with the child, they just go into a room and they do the eye tracking. And so the doctor's time with the family is the same as it always has been. It's really just a couple of extra minutes for the whole visit, but it doesn't really impact the physician themselves because they have a certain amount of time for the well baby checkup and they still pretty much keep that same amount of time. It's just nice because now they have this report and they use that during the well baby checkup to start any conversations that need to be had.
Yes. Now, I really am really excited for your collaboration with the Butterfly Learnings. So how do you see this collaboration and why is it so special for you?
Well, it's really special for me because, like I said, I started my career doing treatment. Yes, I respecialize in neurosciences and I do cortical organoids and genetics and eye tracking and brain imaging and I do all this fancy medical research. But at my heart, I started as an intervention person in the trenches, helping families. And that's why this collaboration is so special to me, because Butterfly Learnings, they are an intervention, company. They are designed to give therapy, to help kids. And so while this could have gone down a strictly medical path where I partnered, with some medical company or something like that, it just magically worked out that I am partnering with an intervention company, which is perfect because, like I said, in the future, I want to develop personalized medicine for children with autism and deliver whatever kind of therapy the future will hold. And so it's like a perfect collaboration. And plus they're super nice too, which makes it fun.
Agreed. What is your expectation from this partnership in next 5 to 10 years? Like, how can it change the landscape of autism in India? Like, India is still in infantile stage as far as awareness of autism is concerned. So what is your expectation and aspiration for this partnership for next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts and ideas about how things are going to change in the field of autism all over the world. And I think eye tracking can help get us there. And India is a good platform for that because you have a really big population. And you have a lot of families that maybe don't know as much about autism. And so this is going to help kind of raise awareness, because once we kind of incorporate into well baby checkups as standard of care, that conversation is going to be opened up with tens of thousands, millions of families eventually. And then we're going to be able to take it to the next step, which is, as I mentioned, starting to develop interventions based on a child's unique eye tracking profile. And so that's kind of, yeah, exactly right. Personalized medicine is where I think the future is going. And I really hope, we can get there with eye tracking. I think we can. We can also potentially incorporate other biomarkers. Maybe take a blood test, see what that tells us, combine that with the baby's eye tracking and get even more personalized medicine. Like, there's just so many things that we can do.
So you're saying that currently interventions can't be personalized, but in future, in 5 to 10 years, that care will also be personalized.
Yes. Right now, interventions are, it really depends on, the therapist. They personalize it as much as they can, but they don't have a roadmap. The eye tracking will give them a roadmap. The eye tracking will say, this child, just not paying attention to auditory at all, but they're doing pretty well with visual. So then the therapist has that roadmap and they will be really more intensive, for example, with training auditory attention. So nobody's had this roadmap before. So that's going to be a new innovation.
Okay. Before this podcast, we were discussing about some competitions. Like, I had researched on some competitors and I could see that a few people are talking about coming up with an app wherein you can, do an eye tracking mechanism and screen the child anywhere. Do you feel, is that beneficial in the sense that would that have the same specificity and accuracy?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a lot of people are moving into all these digital technology, and some people are like, oh, I'm just going to use eye tracking on a tablet or even a phone. Like a parent could download some app and check to see if their child has autism. And, I think right now, the most ethical and medically responsible thing to do is to keep it in the hands of professionals at this time. Because I can imagine, let's say you're a mom and you download some app that's like, using the camera from the phone to see what the baby's looking at, but it's noisy and the dog is barking and grandma is like making pancakes. And then it's not going to be valid. And then we're going to have a whole bunch of false positives. And it's going to, really kind of destroy just what is beautiful about this, which is the accuracy, the objectivity, and just kind of the reflection of the inner biology of the child. But if it's administered in ways like, you're not going to get the same accuracy on a phone, even if it's a great environment. But on top of that, like maybe it's going to be a non-standardized environment, adding more noise, and then it just reduces the utility of it. And so like maybe one day we would get there, but I think the proper way to move forward is to keep it as a medical tool that is, administered in a professional setting. Okay. And then maybe one day we can kind of loosen it out a little bit. But I really think we have to start out this way.
Okay. So now we are in the last section of our podcast.
Okay.
So I just have 3 rapid fire questions for you.
Okay. Bring it on.
Yeah, if you could give a 1-sentence piece of advice to new parents, what would that be?
I would say it's going to be a compound sentence with 2 parts. I would say first is if you get a diagnosis of autism, it's, that's just the special part about your child. Just embrace it, right? Your child's going to have all these special and unique features. Don't get stressed out about it. Just embrace it and say, I have this very, amazing kid in my life. And it's you gotta, just really kind of, I think, embrace the autism. And then the other piece of advice is just more practical. You may, like, I don't know what the landscape is for funding for treatment or something like that, but parents can actually do a lot on their own without even, going to formal and fancy. The main thing to do, because we've talked so much about social attention, is try to keep your child engaged. Don't let them, go off and like pay with this piece of string for 20 minutes because it's easier, because you don't have to necessarily, take care of them for those 20 minutes because they're just flicking this string. Try to keep them as engaged as possible, because we talked about how the environment shapes brain development. It's, it's sculpting how your child's brain is being wired up. So as a parent, the best thing to do is just try to keep your child as engaged. This is a balancing act, right? Because you don't want to frustrate them and make them, feel uncomfortable or whatever if you're just so much trying to keep them engaged. But at the same time, be aware of what they're paying attention to, because what they look at, what they listen to, and what they do is shaping their brain. So you have some control over that, and you should try to use it as much as you can. Okay. So the second one is, what is the single biggest misconception about autism that you would like to debunk? Because, there's so many. Depends on where you live in the world. Like, I'm not going to go there with all the issues that people are having. I think one of the myths about autism is that, like, all people with autism, like, have poor eye contact, for example. That's not true. Some kids do, some kids don't. All kids with autism, are socially avoidant and they don't want to socially interact. Not true. Some don't, but many do. It's just that they have challenges in being able to do it. So kind of, characterizing individuals on the spectrum as being like, antisocial is not necessarily true. Pretty relevant. And beyond research, what gives you the most hope for the future of children with autism? Well, I certainly appreciate the neurodiversity movement from the perspective of just greater acceptance of everyone's differences. And so, I feel a lot of hope that individuals with autism are going to thrive more because there's more awareness. People understand that, everyone is different, and individuals with autism have this particular set of abilities and disabilities. And so I think it's great that we're kind of having a more inclusive attitude as a society in general. So I think that that's hopeful to me. And I also feel hope that early identification, whether it's through eye tracking or just through a darn smart, parent or clinician who's observed something's going on with this child, and the child is getting help much earlier because there's so much more awareness about autism. And I think that that's going to change the landscape of outcomes for kids. And a lot of kids are going to have a better chance of kind of reaching their full potential, because that's what we all want. You want to, I want to, it doesn't matter if you have autism. Everybody's always like trying to be the best that they can be.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Karen. I just wish that your collaboration with Butterfly Learning, in next 10 years, you're able to reach out to every child in India.
All right.
That is what I hope for.
That'll be the challenge. I think we'll do it. I think
Yes,
we can do it. So
yes.
I really appreciate you inviting me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yep.
And your questions were great. You really read my papers, so that was amazing.
Thank you very
thank you
much.
so much for your time and for making this such a great experience.